Hey everyone, this is just a quick deck tech for my blue-white Pauper Mill deck. I featured it over at Pure MTGO, and if you didn't get a chance to go over there and take a look at how it all works, this video will help you understand my card choices a little better. Now, the idea of this deck, I was building casual Pauper decks for my series, Anything But, and really wanted to start off with something a little different. This time around, I decided to go with Mill. You run into Dream Twist as one of the newer cards, and it allows you to put up to 6 cards, thanks to Flashback, from your opponent's library into their grave. The other great card that came out recently was Shriekhorn. 3 charges. It's a little slow because you have to use it only a turn at a time, but you tap it and that removes 2 cards from the top of your opponent's library. With these 2 cards being the focus, there was some great synergy we could find with the Shriekhorns. Now, the first card that works fantastic with it is these Glint Hawks. Now, Glint Hawk is a pretty nice little card because it's a creature, it's a 2/2 with evasion, and that's fantastic. And it's even better because it's a low cost and makes you bounce an artifact. So what ends up happening is you have your Shriekhorn and you use it for 3 turns, and now there are no counters on it. What you're going to be able to do is cast Glint Hawk and return it to your hand so that you can recast it and have 3 new counters on it. This will allow you to deck even more from your opponent. And what you really want to be able to do is use it as a combination. So you want to have the mana open to cast Glint Hawk and then immediately recast Shriekhorn. That's one of the best things about the Glint Hawk is the fact that it's only 1 costed. It really makes that accessible. Alright, the next card that I had to add, or wanted to add at least, is Trinket Mage. This is a low-costed creature that allows you to tutor up your Shriekhorns. If you're going to play a deck where the Shriekhorn is the main focus, you want to be able to find them, and not just one, you want to be able to have multiples going. Having only 1 Shriekhorn is going to give you a total of 6 cards without the Glint Hawks and without anything, so you want to be able to have multiples of those going at one time. And if you're going to run Trinket Mage, I always decided to run the artifact lands as well. You get 4 of the Ancient Dens, and I ran 4 of the blue artifact lands as well. And this makes Trinket Mage a tutor for lands. You can cast it, and if you're mana short, you can find those. If you're color short, you can grab the white. Another thing that is helpful is the fact that this whole deck is low casting cost. Your biggest one is these 2 Serrated Arrows at 4. So I ran a little bit smaller land pile than I usually do. This time around it's only about 23 lands, and I've also added 4 Evolving Wilds. You can also use Terramorphic Expanse, it's the same thing. And that allows you to search up the 2 planes if you have to, but it mostly allows you to thin your deck. You don't want to be drawing lands in a mid to late game. Sometimes you run into a point where you're low on life and you really need a couple cards to mill them down. And that's going to help you do that. But going back to the artifacts, if you're running the lands and you're running the Shriekhorns, you're going to be able to have 3 or 4 on the table at any time. This is perfect for the Metalcraft on the Urok Sun Chasers. Now there are several tournament level affinity decks that will run the Sun Chasers instead of the Carapace Forger, and the reason for that is it becomes a 3/3 with flying, and evasion is always a plus. So we're going to run 4 of those to be able to get those in, and 90% of the time they're going to hit the table and have the Metalcraft enabled. The other card that I threw in for the Metalcrafts are the Stoic Rebuttal. It's basically going to be a counterspell because when you have Metalcraft, it allows you to cast it for a 2 cost. That, along with a full set of counterspells, will be basically the protection package in this deck. The next Metalcraft card is the Silclaws. They will be able to, with Metalcraft, fly over, and when they do damage, you can see they mill cards off the top of your opponent's deck. It's very important to be able to keep doing that. Sometimes you run into some problems because it's a smaller creature. Hopefully the flying will help you out with that. There's not a lot of control as far as creature kill, so it's kind of hard some games to get it through, but when you can, it's a big plus. The Serrated Arrows is great removal for this deck because it basically fits the colors, which is heavy blue, and blue does not have much in the way of removal. The one thing you can also do with that is when the arrows get a low counters, you can use the Glint Hawks in a late to mid game to bounce it to your hand and recast it if you have to. With a featuring package of Serrated Arrows and Shriekhorn, the next thing I wanted to add was Steady Progress. This card gives you draw as well as the ability to add counters to these two permanents, and that's fantastic. The Shriekhorns, like I said, you want multiples, you want to keep them going as often as possible. The one thing you do have to remember, though, is when you're using Shriekhorn, you want to keep one counter on it at all times. You don't want it any lower than that unless you have a Glint Hawk or you're drawing into a Glint Hawk. You know that you can use a Glint Hawk, basically, to return it to your hands. If you use all the counters on it, you will not be able to use Steady Progress to buff it even more. So keep that in mind. You always want to do that. Another thing with the Shriekhorns I found is usually want to wait to use them until your opponent's end step. This way, if they have anything like a scry mechanic or anything that allows them to adjust their library, a search, something like that, you can do it in response, and maybe you'll mess up their plans that way. But yeah, you want to keep one counter on it, until the last possible second. Whether it be they're about to destroy it, or you only need 2 more cards to mill them to 0. You want to be able to keep it to the last possible second so that you can actually use your Steady Progresses to their best ability. The last card here is kind of not quite a feller, but the Occultist here. He's a decent sized creature. You kind of need a blocker, and he's got a 3 toughness, so that's good for it. But what it basically will allow you to do is you will find yourself in the occasion having to chump block, stuff like that, to keep yourself in the game. And it's just an added body. It allows you to put 1 card from your opponent's deck into his graveyard when something dies. Whether it be your creature, his creature, doesn't matter. It's helpful. I may at some point, if I keep playing with this deck, change it out, but for now it seems to be a nice fit. There is no sideboard with this because, like I said, it was meant as a casual pauper deck. If you're looking for some changes you might be able to do for modifications, Dream Twist, can be switched out for things like Tome Scourge is the one that's a 1 cost blue and mills 5 from your opponent. I like Dream Twist better because it's an instant and it has the flashback. As a total, if you cast it both times, it's 6 cards as opposed to 5. And when you leave mana open for your counter spells, you will be able to cast Dream Twist at the end of your opponent's turn if you found you did not need your counter spells. It's nice to have that. Another thing, if you're thinking the package is still light on removal, maybe reduce your amount of counter spells from a total of 7 to, 5 maybe, and throw in a couple Journey to Nowhere if creatures are becoming a big problem to you. I will say, after playing a lot of games, that if you come into any kind of heavy tournament play deck, you will run into some issues. There are things like the Crusher and Annihilate that will become an issue if you do not have a counterspell in hand. There really isn't a lot you can do. The Serrated Arrows, they're helpful, but it's only once per turn, and it's only -1/-1. It will make things a little more manageable, will not necessarily kill any big creatures. So you may want to do that. You may decide that you want to drop your counterspells down for Journey to Nowhere or something like that, maybe even Oblivion